w Polsce.
Dziękujemy bardzo, John, za ten niezwykle inspirujący wykład. Faktycznie jest tak, że w naszej pracy
Indeed, in our work we very often look at the British examples because they are very much of a pioneer character, and I think that John's intervention has shown us that there are so many different areas that we can be active in so that the protection of minors on the internet is more effective. Our next speaker is Jakub Boratyński from the European Commission, the head of unit, Director General Justice, Freedom and Security. We're happy that this conference has given you an opportunity to come back home. Mr. Boratyński is going to tell us about EU activities against cybercrime and child sexual exploitation on the internet. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, it is a great honor and pleasure for me to be back in my homeland to tell you about what I do in the European Commission, dealing with these very important issues. Great words of respect for the Nobody's Children Foundation and all those entities active in this sphere in Poland. Poland really is now one of the more advanced countries in constructing this broad cooperation of many different institutions, which is very important, because if we are honest and if we do not overly praise ourselves, because frankly speaking, the effective we are still far away from being victorious in fighting sexual exploitation of children on the internet. The number of websites with children pornography, according to recent statistics, is still on the rise. Between 2003 and 2007, this number went up by 4 times. Presently, on the web, it is says that there are approximately 4 million sites with this type of content. These sites also include images of children under the age of 2. Every day, 200 new images are published, are uploaded, and at any point in time, 750,000 or so consumers of this type of content, perpetrators, are online and use this type of illegal content. It is also said that the production of child pornography generates between $2 billion and $13 billion annually on the global scale. Chat rooms are also one of the methods very eagerly used by those who abuse children. How can the European Union respond to such challenges? The Commission is this huge, if not monstrous, entity in Brussels. I will only resort to the dimension of the activities of the Commission that is related, dedicated to the criminal activity, persecuting offenders. Of course, on the other hand, there's this preventive side of our activities. This is DG Information Society. And my colleague will be talking about it at greater length tomorrow. But I am going to be sort of limiting my presentation more to the criminal side. And this has to be seen in the broader context of combating cyber violence. There are 3 main directions, if you will. The first one is combating illegal content online. And here, evidently, the issue of child pornography is number 1, because the illegal character of this type of content is beyond any shadow of a doubt. There are other content that are deemed illegal in different countries, such as racist content, etc., etc. I mean, and this is the type of activity. There is this broad consensus in terms of the broadest of consensi in terms of fighting child pornography, seen as absolutely illegal content. The second type of activities is large-scale attacks against information systems. These are the types of activities that we will be undertaking next year. And finally, the third area is identity theft. These are the three main priority issues. Now, what does this mean in practice? In the European Commission, of course, we're not directly persecuting perpetrators. We are there to create European legislation. And the key document here is the framework decision on combating the sexual exploitation of children and child pornography. And the second document is the second framework decision on combating attacks against information systems. The framework decisions in Eurospeak mean directive on cooperation, criminal cooperation, not criminal cooperation, but police cooperation, framework decisions which are then translated into Polish law or national law. And in Polish law, it means that the definitions of the different crimes as provided for in the framework decision are then transcribed or translated or transposed into the Polish acts of law. The aim is to lead to a common denominator of the criminal law of the different member states so as to be more effective in combating crimes which are of a cross-border or trans-border character. This, of course, applies to cybercrime. The framework decision, which is now in place, touches upon the following issues. First of all, it promotes a minimum level or common denominator of how national legislation or how national legislative systems are to define child pornography and related notions. It also establishes minimum penalties. It also extends jurisdiction beyond the countries where the crime has taken place. In cyberspace, it is very difficult to pinpoint where the actual place of the crime was. And also, it provides for a minimum level of aid for victims. Right now, it is relatively obvious that the European law in place now is encumbered by relatively significant shortcomings. Many different issues, such as the different mechanisms on the protection of children in criminal proceedings, have to be strengthened. It cannot be that the situation when the perpetrator has been effectively identified, the child in the pretrial proceedings or in the criminal trial proceedings, the child is again traumatized. And these are the procedural guarantees that we're lacking, guarantees that would provide, for example, for the fact that children would not have to personally testify in the court. Another issue, and that is related to the fact that there are new forms of crimes appearing constantly as a result of ever new technology. I mean, this is law. This means that the law is still lagging behind the development of technology. In March of this year, the European Commission presented a new draft of the framework decision, which is now being negotiated by the member states of the European Union. And perhaps let me just draw your attention to its most important elements. First of all, it is based on the assumption that we will only be effective if we apply a holistic approach where, on the one hand, we create effective provisions enabling us to effectively persecute perpetrators, and on the other hand, that there are strong standards on the protection of the aggrieved, on the victims, and there are also proposals as to how to prevent such crime from happening. The objective there too is also for the European standards to comply with the highest international standards that are reflected in the Convention of the Council of Europe on combating cyber violence from 2007. Now, more precisely, in terms of persecuting criminals, we are introducing new definitions or new crimes that are subject to penalizing. First of all, it's grooming. And this is a new crime, very difficult to translate into Polish, by the way. Another crime that is prohibited is viewing child pornography without downloading files. 5 years ago, it would not have been possible. This year, nowadays, it is very much so. Another thing that is new is the use of webcams to present sexual abuse, so online sexual abuse presentation. And finally, different means and methods of promoting or enabling child abuse. This encompasses a very controversial idea to lead to a situation in which those who organize the so-called trips, sex trips, for example, to Asia, if they could also be subject to penalization. Such things are also happening on the web now, and the situation has been met with no response so far. If we are to really treat combating sexual, or if we were to treat sexual abuse of children as a really serious crime, then the law enforcement services in the member states have to have at their disposal a full array of operational techniques that are applied in combating organized crime. And as you may very well know, in the virtual space, the possibility for law enforcement services do not really have much chance in fully penetrating the web so as to lead to a situation in which charges can be posed. Another thing is the introduction of a provision that would impose on the law enforcement services the necessity or the duty to identify victims. I mean, right now it is the logic to focus rather on the defender, on the perpetrator, to get to the perpetrator as soon as possible before the court. What we think is very important is to also very much focus on identifying victims so as to be able to help them. And finally, on the prevention front, and of course talking about the online situation because there are also other preventive tools, is the issue that Agnieszka mentioned in her introduction, the question of blocking access to illegal websites, to websites containing child pornography. The European Commission has proposed to have this a duty imposed on member states that which the member states can carry out by whatever method. If there is an effective and efficient model of self-regulation, then that's fine with the European Commission. We see this as indispensable because as we know, taking off child pornography websites off the web is very, very difficult. This is something very problematic, and instead of removing, it is blocking access that seems to be the more effective result. Aside from legislation, a few words on international cooperation that the European Union is involved in. I would like to, for example, mention the cooperation that we have within the G8. The Commission is now promoting the development of 24-hour contact points that accept reports or notifications of different acts of cyber violence or cyber crime. We are also now in the process of creating, together with Europol, a European alert platform where reports on crimes could be submitted. Among these crimes, of course, child pornography is one of the priority ones. This platform is to serve as a platform for comparing different information and better persecute criminals. This is also, by the way, a project supported by the European Union. An important document that sets a new trend are the EU Council conclusions on public-private partnership on combating cybercrime. This was a decision made by ministers of justice and ministers of internal affairs in November last year. One of the results of that is a newly developed European training platform for law enforcement agencies, the police and prosecutors, to better prepare these services for a more effective persecution of this type of crime. The law enforcement has much to learn from the from the private sector. Hence, PPP is very important here. A very interesting example of such partnership is the European Financial Coalition, representative of which Gabriel Shaw is here with us, who is going to tell us more about this undertaking. It's a very interesting example of cooperation of very many different entities, the police and banks, credit cards, and tech companies, who all aim at pooling their resources to combat child pornography by, for example, tracking financial flows. So there is this a group of allied forces, if you will. What is also important in all that is the practical assistance available or proposed by the Commission. First of all, it's Safer Internet, the program that is going to be talked about tomorrow. Our criminal, quote-unquote, site, or we have the program under the title of Prevention of and Fight Against Crime. This year it's 70 million euro. Next year it's going to be 90 million euro. Combating cyber crime is one of our main priorities. We do this anytime we can. Please, you're very much invited to participate in the program. I know that it's not easy because the projects are usually very big and require partnership of many different stakeholders, but it is possible, and it's a wonderful opportunity to do something together by a number of member states, by representatives of law enforcement, justice sector, and NGOs and the private sector. So the room for maneuver is really great. We also plan to announce a special competition dedicated to exclusively cybercrime next year. So if there's anybody of you here who would be interested in participating in this type of project, please do visit our website. The department that services this program employs a number of Poles, so you can even get the information in your native language, Polish. What we do at the European Union level and what we will keep on doing will not lead to any gigantic leap in quality unless there is this far-fetched readiness to participate in all member states and among the different sectors. Hence, meetings such as this one today is extremely important, one that gives hope that our activities will, with time, bring bigger fruit. Thank you again, and I really do count on a very interesting discussion.